On today's episode, let's take a viewer's comment and make a sequel. Because as we all know, sequels are almost always just as good, if not better, than the original. What's up, nerds? Well, the previous video, the one where I take this dirty ass boombox and made it decent, well looking, and almost decent sounding, is by far my most popular video. Now, that's not saying much since I only have a handful of videos, only a few dozen followers, but for what it's worth, yeah, this has more views than all my other videos combined, pretty much. So I really appreciate that, and the feedback has been pretty good. And one of the comments was, hey, since you did all this work and you upgraded the speakers, why not drop a little bit more powerful amplifier in there? So we're going to try that. Now, Sony went cheap on this model. They did release another model outside the United States that had double the wattage, and that sounds like a big leap forward, but this guy only had 4.5 watts maybe. So the big guy only had 9 watts total, which isn't a lot for a boombox. I guess it might be if it's got the speaker tunings and everything just right, but this guy, no, not so much. And you also have to consider in the mid 2000s when this was released, Sony, they were all over the place. They were, focusing on the PlayStation 3, Blu-ray disc format development. They're even trying to get their mobile phones with Sony Ericsson phones off the ground. And you know where that kind of went. So, and let's not forget, they acquired all like movie studios and things like that. So they were all over the map. Boom boxes, they were just kind of, let's just make one. I guess there's a handful of people that still want one. Let's just throw this one out there. I mean, they still made, bookshelf systems and things like that, and really decent audio equipment, but this ain't it. And a few weeks after the video was released, a viewer suggested, hey, why not consider using a TPA 3116 based Class D tiny amp? So that's what I got. Went to Parts Express. I'll put the link down below. And got this guy in. Now, this thing, I think, is capable of up to like 30 watts maybe. So it's going to be a substantial upgrade. The only problem is the power requirements. This thing, it has a range of like between 9 and 24 volts. But to really get the oomph out of it, you want something a little higher than 12 volts and a little bit more amperage than what I've been using, which is this little rinky-dink 9-volt, 2-amp, wall wart here. So there are going to be some challenges in here. First, we've got to work around the power issue. Then we have to find out if we can actually retrofit that amplifier card here up into where the main volume is, or if we have to somehow take this off the board, wire directly to it. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been inside this, so I really don't know. The service manual it's decent, but it's like I said, there's a lot of old Xerox copies of Xerox copies of Xerox copies, and it's kind of blurry and not really a lot of in detail specifications. So we have to feel around for it. So with that being said, we're going to get this guy torn apart and get right into it. Well, we've got the boombox opened. Right off the bat, I can see this is going to fit pretty decently. Might have to spin it around. I was afraid the volume potentiometer would be part of a bigger circuit board that would interface with the controls on the front, but it's not. It's all self-contained. Actually, it's probably this circuit board here. This is probably glued to the housing here. And what we can do, maybe is put a couple of notches on the side here. That way the amplifier board kind of sits in there. It gives it some added stability. And these already have the, the 3 lines going in. So this may be pretty well. I don't want to jinx it, but you know how that goes. Anyway, the next step is to find out where the audio comes out before it goes into the amplifier itself. We want to hijack that signal and redirect it into the new amplifier board. Since the last video about the BoomBox, somebody has actually uploaded a true PDF of the service manual, not a couple of JPEGs of poorly scanned copies of it. So this helps out quite a bit. Now, we find out on the main board that you've got your right channel, left channel, and I hope the AGND stands for audio ground. That comes in on pins 8, 9, and 10 on the main board. So let's go to the main board. Here's the main board right here. This is the connector CN301 back here. Now, these connectors look like this cable just goes in and gets soldered underneath. It doesn't lift out like these guys. So what I may have to do is, these are the wires here. Actually, that's number 10. That's number 10, which is the ground. Right below it is 9, which is the right channel, and below it, right there with the long red stripe, that's the left channel. That's pin 8. What I may do, instead of desoldering these from the board, because it might get messy and I might not be able to get them back in, I might just snip these somewhere up in here where it's easily accessible, pull them back, strip them back, intercept it there, take the signal out, and test that out. And if that's it, that's fine and dandy. If not, I can always resolder the wires together. It'll look a little gross, but shove it back in here, and yeah, it'll be our little secret. Now, some people would say, well, why don't you just come off the headphone jack or something like that? The headphone jack has got a little preamplification to it, or regular amplification to it, to drive the headphone drivers and speakers. And that could cause some distortion when you go into the amp. I want a pure line level signal. So we just want to bypass this little guy altogether. And this is the output here. And that amplified signal goes here to the jack board. And then from here, jumps out to the speakers right there. So we just want to eliminate this guy. It's going to go into the amplifier board that we got from Parts Express right here, then go back out either to the jack board or directly into the speakers themselves, which will probably be a lot easier to do because I don't know what's going to happen up in here. And I can hear some of you saying, well, what about the power? The power is the easy part. We know where to pull that out of. We know we've got to upgrade the power from 9 volts to 24. Then I have to transform part of that back down to 9 volts to drive all of this, the CD player, the tuner, and everything else. So, but we know right in the back here where it comes in right there. And we have, a little transformer right there. Probably just put another one to go from 12 volts down to 9 volts. We'll just have a couple of transformers in here. But thankfully, I showed you in the first video, there's tons of space in this thing, which is really a blessing. So we're going to see real quick if we can intercept the signal and just test it out and see if we have the right cables. And then we'll just go from there. Well, try as I might to intercept the audio signal before it hit the power amp here, I couldn't do it. I mean, I had the right wires. I had the right audio channel, left audio channel, and the common ground for the two. And I verified this. As it was playing, I could disconnect, reconnect, and you'd hear speakers cut out. When I went to take the signal coming from the main board here before it hit the power amp and put it into another amplifier, the external amplifier, I would get nothing but a hum. I tried ground isolation, all this other stuff to try and see if any of that helped, and nothing did. So I'm going to have to use the headphone jack as a source of audio, which I kind of don't want to do because you just have to keep it at a bare minimum before you overdrive the amplifier itself. So, I mean, that might be the only way to do it. So to make that little job a little easier, I took the input board, I turned it upside down. Everything's going to be self-contained now. This is the input jack for the auxiliary where we have the Bluetooth going in. So I just might get another one of these little headphone cable here like that, and just put that into Bluetooth, wire it direct in to eliminate all this patched in wires that we have going on here. And this little plug I had to put in to bypass the little switches inside here to cut that off. So it may be a little easier in the long run. And then take the volume knob out here, mount it somewhere down here, the volume circuitry, and just keep it at a very low setting permanently right here, a little bit out the way, and then put the amp where this went. I really wish I could have found a signal. It would have made things a lot easier, but sometimes that's the way it goes. Yeah, thanks a lot, Sony. Anyway, let me get to working on that. And here's where we stand. I have, okay, the CD radio auxiliary goes into this main board, which goes down into that power amplifier board. That comes into this little, the jack board, as it's called, headphone out into the amplifier, and then I hijack the speakers either side. And it's actually sounding pretty good. I mean, all right, you know what's coming up. But you can turn up here and increase the volume there. And you can also increase the volume here. So you kind of fine tune it with this. I mean, we could probably leave this at a fixed level and still control it with this because it is not distorting. I cranked it up, much to the dismay of my neighbors hearing Chumbawamba blasted out. But, oh well, that's the risk you take. So what I might do is mount this back in this little cavity here on the inside, like underneath there. And that way I can access it and turn up and down the volume, you know, when you just want an extra boost to blast it out or something. And it works. It sounds good. I don't know if there's some kind of gain protection on that because it is a headphone input. I don't know. I think there's two inputs. There's like a little segmented, like 3-pin input right here. And there's also the headphone. And according to the spec sheet, these are both line level. So I don't know if this headphone has, like I said, some kind of automatic gain control or something like that that kind of knocks it down a little bit so it doesn't overdrive the input of the amp. But whatever it does, it sounds great. So we have all those logistics worked out. Now, to get the power situated, right now, the whole boombox is running off of 9 volts, and the board is running off of 24 volts DC. It was 12, and it was getting louder, but it can handle 24 volts DC, and it made a difference. So I will run 24 volts in here, split it off. 24 volts is going to feed the amplifier. The other 24 volts is going to go into a transformer, knock it down to 9 volts. That'll operate the rest of this, and that 9 volts is going to come back and knock down to 5, which powers the Bluetooth right there. A lot of transformers in here. Unfortunately, this thing will probably not be battery powered anytime soon, unless I can find a 24-volt DC battery that'll fit in the existing battery compartment or something like that. Like one of those little lead acid jobs you use in like battery backups. Those are usually 12, but you could wire them together and get a 24 out of it. I don't know how small they make those guys, but it could work. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. So I'm going to get to tinkering and mounting and doing other things, and I'll report back with a little bit more progress when I got some. Okay, here's the 24-volt adapter I want to use to power this. That's what I've been using to test it out with. I want to kind of mount it right up in here. The only problem is, let me show you, it's just a little bit too close here. So what I might do is try and decase this thing. That way I can take the input socket here and then mount it right here. There's enough space for it. Be nice and incognito also. So we're going to try that little thing and see if that works, or see if I totally destroy this thing trying to decase it, which I've done in the past. So fingers crossed on that one. I was able to remove this little rubber protective flap off in one piece. That's a miracle in and of itself. I got this thing kind of marked off where it needs to be cut, so the power input can just theoretically slide in. And we'll see if we can get that to work. Maybe not. Probably not. But we'll give it a shot. Is it perfect? Well, no. Will it work? Absolutely. And these little gaps in between, like right up in there, we're going to fix it with the 1-2 punch of JB Weld. So there you go. Progress update. I think I've got the power sorted out here. I'll kind of walk you through it. 110 comes in from the back there and gets transformed down to 24 volts here. That is split off. One half goes to the amplifier, which now lives up in here. The other 24 goes into this DC to DC transformer, which takes it down to 9 volts. That 9 volts is then sent to this, was called a battery board, because these battery cables, which are now unplugged, also fed into it. It's like a little interface, but basically it goes to this guy here, which plugs into your main power board. This is just the 9 volts that power CD player, tuner, pretty much the rest of the box. So this has the 9 volts riding on it. When you come over here, inside here is where the amplifier lives. I've just put a little hole here, got a little hot glue together. I got the audio in right here. And then my 2 speaker inputs, or 2 speaker outputs, I'm so sorry, right there. These are going to get coiled up. I like to leave a nice serviceable length of cable. That way when I disconnect the back from the front, I'm not straining to disconnect speakers or power or anything like that. And I routed these cables here. I just took my Dremel tool and notched these little supports a little bit, shoved them back in there, and put some hot glue. So, I mean, you know, JB Weld, hot glue. I'm just a strip of duct tape and some self-tappers away from this being a true redneck revival. So, hey, if it works, it works. Spin this guy around, show you where the amplifier, right up in there. Got some little standoffs. I have a billion little volume knobs sitting in my stash in the workshop, so I'm sure I have a nice little pretty red one that'll go great right there. Also use some hot glue to kind of seal up that hole, you know, in case, I don't know, acoustically wise, that would have changed it. I can't imagine. I mean, I've added so much stuff in here. I'm sure I've changed the acoustic profile of this thing, but, you know, who cares? It's going to get loud. And that's really all that matters. So let me show you the front, because I think the power and everything, this side is done, except for, you know, cleaning this stuff up a little bit. But yeah, this side is nice and done. I don't think that much has changed since the last update on this part of the BoomBox. You know, the headphone board, swapped it around. This is going to the Bluetooth right here. That's our audio auxiliary in. The button is still there. It's still functional, so we didn't disable that any. This is the input. Well, this is the headphone jack, so that's how we're getting the audio to the main amplifier. The volume knob here, it's still, well, actually it's a rotary encoder. So this is what I'm now calling the preamp, because I mean it'll do like fine tune control, and then we'll use the main amplifier behind it to really crank this sucker up. So all that's left now to do is kind of clean up the speaker wiring, hook everything up, and fire this up, and we'll see what happens. Well, this is awesome. One thing I did not do when rebuilding all of this was test fit the little headphone board when I flipped it upside down to make sure it would clear this little shelf. Guess what? It didn't, and it snapped. I didn't put that much pressure on it. Best case scenario, I can reorient it some way, reposition it, remount it somewhere. Worst case scenario, I snap the trace, I ruin the board. Fun. Yeah, this is awesome, folks. Awesome. And this is what I was afraid of. That crack kills, especially this one right here. I did the traces back to these little pads here, to the various test points on the board down here, and the flat traces are good. It's just where it connects from these little solder joints to the pin connectors that 1, 2, maybe more are broken off just between those two. So a little bit of bodge wire should fix it. It's going to be a pain in the butt because this board can't be easily removed. I mean, these connectors here, this whole harness is, they pop it in and solder it directly in, and I'd take it out to resolder, but I'd need these pins in here to make the jump connections. So I'm going to have to brace it in here, get some of my long needle nose pliers and a lot of patience, and jump it from here to here, all four of them, just to be on the safe side. Ah, man, this is a saying about measuring once and cutting 3 times or something like that. Yeah, maybe I ought to follow that advice next time before I just try and shove everything back together and get this thing going. So, lesson learned. Well, probably not. Wow, that escalated quickly. I thought I just had to make a little jumper from one point to another, but then this whole corner just kind of flaked off when I started soldering. Not good. So I had to take the connector that was soldered into the board, and I just extended the wires directly onto it. Now it's going to get out of focus. Wrap around and solder directly to the board. Also, this little trace broke off as well, so I had to bodge that up. So that's good. I hope it works. Only one way to find out. All right, crisis averted for now. It works. Huzzah. I am kind of hesitant on maybe putting some hot glue down on this, where these things are soldered in, just to kind of protect them and keep them. Also, this thing might just have to kind of dangle loosely in here, which I am not a fan of. I have some hot glue, maybe adhere it to the side right there or a little further in. Either way, I'm going to measure it this time and try and close it before I, make that mistake again. So, okay, we're back on the road to progress. I have everything buttoned up. Well, actually, we mounted that board in there, use some hot glue to kind of attach it to the side there. It fits perfectly now. It's not going to get crushed. Everything's back together, tightened up, and let's see if it works. Fingers crossed. And the CD player does take a while to read the disc. That hasn't changed. I don't know why, but whatever. Yep. bass is definitely more pronounced, hits harder. Let me go to the Bluetooth, make sure that still works. I get no doubt. Did y'all really expect anything else? And now let's just see if the radio works.
Free never sounded so good.
Ron should talk.
And actually, it's a bunch of commercials, which is all commercial radio is now. It's a few tunes surrounded by wall-to-wall commercials. Anyway, that's about it for this guy. I mean, I want to thank the viewer for, commenting about the upgrade, the suggestion, and it worked out like a champ. In fact, it worked too good because now when I crank it up, the CD skips because of the real pronounced bass hits. It's not advertised as having any anti-skip technology. Usually back in the day, if it had it, it would have been, plastered all over this thing, like in 5 different places. If it had 5-second, 30-second, anti-skip technology, this doesn't. And that's okay because, we're not going to be cranking it up that loud. And if we do, I'm going to be using the Bluetooth interface. The radio, well, it's a cool feature, I guess, just to have, but really, who listens to commercial radio anymore? And that's it. I guess the takeaways from this video is, you can soup up anything, you can modify anything, no matter how much you've done it before. You can always crank it up another notch or so. So, keep those comments and suggestions happening because they'll lead to more videos, especially when I can't find something to, retrofit or, repair or something like that. And always measure and test fit slowly because, you don't want another accident like that, especially when you have to do intricate soldering after 3 cups of coffee. Wow, I didn't see that one coming, but who does? Anyway, guys, thank you for sticking this out. I always appreciate you watching these things and all the comments, and you guys take it easy.